Earlier today, we witnessed a ceremony that admitted some 26 new members to our order. I feel that this is cause enough for myself to give you some broad background pointers of how this order of ours came into being, and also to highlight certain notable historical events and phases in the period from when the original order came into being up until today. This covers a period of about 1,000 years, in fact a little bit more, but the order itself was about 1,000 years old. And I beg of you, don't be too disturbed about this. Time can go by very, very quickly, as any of us that have reached middle age will rather forlornly admit to. The origins of the order are, at very best, somewhat obscure and hazy. However, most reliable sources show that a hostel was founded in Jerusalem on the orders of Pope Gregory the Great. Its reasons for existence was to take care of the needs of the local people and also for strangers who were visiting the city of Jerusalem. These needs included not only medical care and nursing, but also lodging and food. It seems that in the year of about 1000, I might tell you already 400 years have gone past, so there's some hope for you now, the hostel was destroyed. Nevertheless, a colony survived, and in about 1070, a convent in which the colony then lived and worked was dedicated to St. John the Baptist. This is the date that we all seem to agree was the founding of our order. Well, not so much our order, but the original order of St. John. At this time, the order was, it would seem, a purely religious and humanitarian organization whose members referred to themselves as Brothers of St. John or Hospitallers. You will have noticed that so far there is no mention of the word knight or knights. And this was purely because most of them, in fact all of them at that time, were monks, and hence referred to each other as brother, which is the mode of address that we use between our members today. Only later did the colony organize itself into a military force when it appeared for the first time in the defense of Jerusalem after the First Crusade, which I have noted here is in 1099. In the early 12th century, the Holy See, with Paschal II as Pope, took an active interest in the order and granted bulls of protection. This would indicate that at this time, at least, there was a very close and good relationship between the Holy See and the order. This, unfortunately, was soon to change, and some years later, with the acceptance of various lands, properties, and certain military forts and installation, the hospitaller character and complexion of the order changed, and a new status that was independent from the church came into being. This, as you can imagine, caused certain apprehension in religious circles. Ironically, it was at this time also that coincided with the increased military activity from the non-Christian forces in the area. And so the services of all chivalric orders, including that of St. John, were sought and were very much appreciated, and also were willingly given by members of the various orders. The consequence of this was that there was a huge amount of wealth that flowed into the orders in the form of materiel, money, support, and immense bequests from the areas of various countries in Europe. This in turn resulted in strong groups, or langs as they were called in those days, being formed, each with a distinct national characteristic. Among the first of these were the 7 langs or priories of Provence, Auvergne, France, Italy, Germany, England, and Spain, all of whom were strong supporters of the Crusades at that time. As can be imagined, this caused some strains and stresses as each group or lang supported to protect its own national interests. And ever since then, this element has colored the development of the order. The 14th century, therefore, saw the order as what one historian described it, a federation of national societies. Despite this, the overall power and influence of the order as a whole increased and grew enormously, especially with the suppression of the Knights Templar by Rome. when the Hospitallers found themselves the recipients of all that Rome had taken away from the Knights Templars, and which they had inherited from the people and the people that gave the Knights Templars these huge wealthy areas and lands. By the mid of the 14th century, there were changes occurring in the world, and these that affected the order most seriously, and it went as a consequence through a very dark period. One of the worst of these was the fall of Constantinople, which was a bitter blow to them. Quarrels broke out between the Christians of that time, and as the role of the Western Christianity that was being played at the time was not exactly the very brightest, and which one must reluctantly admit the Knights also participated. However, to their credit, one cannot deny that their action, in some part in any case, it was responsible for the safety of Rome and that against, and also of the West, against the huge forces of the Ottoman Empire that was gradually moving westwards.